Hello, family. Before we get into it, let me make a few disclaimers up front. This video is likely to trigger some of you. It's not my intention to harm, to hurt, to offend, or to manipulate your emotions. It's certainly not my intention to exploit anybody's narrative or story for my own use. It's my intention to reflect. Second disclaimer. I don't do well with straw man argumentation. I certainly don't like steel man argumentation. Like, if you're going to argue me, argue the point I'm making, not the point you extrapolate from what I have made. And so for those of you that have spent the past 7 days straw manning me, I'm about to expose that. And I expose it not in an attack, but to simply say this can't be how we form arguments with each other. Third, I generally don't respond well to being threatened. And I know that in the language of the Bluebird app, that's the language, right? If somebody says something you don't like, you attack them, you cancel them, and they must never be heard from again. I've said this point before, and I will say it again. I was raised to believe that speaking the truth as you see it is a form of courage. Seeing a truth and refusing to share it because you might be attacked for it is cowardice. So, I don't respond well to being threatened. I certainly don't respond well to being sworn at or called names. Let me put it to you another way, guys. I'm a dark-skinned guy with pink lips who grew up in a township. Okay? I come from a massive family. There is no insult or joke you can make about me that my own family hasn't made about me. They did it with love, some of you do it with malice. But if you think the threatening language is going to work, it's not going to work. Fourth, I remain infinitely teachable. If I get something wrong, I'm happy to be educated, to be corrected, to be called into order. Very happy. I have no problem with that. My only request is that we have a fact-based conversation about what I got wrong. Okay? And then finally, I'm very worried about the trajectory of our country when even us young people don't seem to, as it's been my experience, demonstrate the ability to form arguments, hold an argument, debate a point of view without resorting to insult and name-calling. That cannot be how you construct a nation. And I know a lot of you guys watching this, that's kind of the language that you've learned because that's how politicians do their business. It's how we engage in public discourse in South Africa. If somebody says something you don't like, you don't reply to the thing they've said, you reply to them, right? That ad hominem, the attacking of the person to disqualify their point. I'm not a perfect human being, I've never been. And so to go on social media and try and flare up my imperfections doesn't address the point I made. The point still stands. There are some of you watching this who made a decision a long time ago that you don't like Vusi Thembekwayo. And to you I say, I don't like you either. Do you see how that works? That's the choice we have in a free democratic society. You don't have to like me, and I don't have to like you. I gave up trying to be a people pleaser a long time ago because you guys are infinitely impossible to please. Every frontier of this people pleasing thing you push, there's a new frontier to pursue. So if for whatever reason, whether it's how I speak English or the fact that I have the audacity to wear a well-fitted suit is something that offends you, then You're entitled to that. Good, all the best to you. Now let's get to the meat of the matter. So, as it appears, I set off an atomic bomb when I said what I said on the interview with Professor JJ. What did I say exactly? My words were quite specific. We'll address first the interview, then the tweet. Right. My words were this. If, God rest his soul, and I'm so sorry for the Forbes family for using your son, the brother in the family, the breadwinner, to make the point. I'm desperately sorry that I've amplified your suffering by bringing you into this conversation, this debate. And I hope you find it in your heart to forgive me. It was not my intention to disrespect Keenan Forbes' legacy or to use him for cheap political point scoring. Ngiyaxolisa, honestly. But let's go back to the exact words I used. I said that if the late Keenan was murdered during apartheid and the apartheid state wanted to find the killer, they would have done so. That seems to have triggered some of you. So here's what I think some of you heard. I think you guys heard me to say the apartheid government found every killer during apartheid. That's not what I said. You're strawmanning my argument. Some of you heard me to say that the apartheid police were just, good, righteous people who were implementing a just, good, righteous political system. I didn't say that either. You're steelmanning my argument. Some heard me to say that the apartheid government would have made a fantastic success because the criminal justice system under apartheid was a fantastic success. Nope, didn't say that either. And then there are some of you who didn't even listen to that. But let me tell you what you wanted to hear. You wanted to hear me saying apartheid was good. And I definitely didn't say that. So what did I say? I said the following. I said that apartheid was and remains a crime. Finished. No qualifications. No additions, no justifications. It was a crime, it remains a crime. And we can't apologize for that. And we're never going to be apologists for that. It's a statement of fact. Like many of you watching this video, I lost family members to the apartheid regime too. These are the facts. So I did not say, nor am I saying now, that apartheid was good, that the state was good. Didn't say that. What did I say then? I said the following. I said that the apartheid state developed within it the capabilities to enforce the agenda of apartheid. And there is no more glaring evidence of this than how the apartheid state conducted the security forces of South Africa. That's probably the most acute way we see it. That and the formation of state-owned enterprises. When they had an agenda, they went for it. Please, I didn't say when they had a good agenda, a righteous agenda, an inclusive agenda. I said when they had an agenda. Why is this important? There are some of you, and there was somebody who sent me who commented on Twitter and said, apartheid was inept. Ooh, okay. And corrupt. We agree on the latter, by the way. We completely agree. Apartheid was completely corrupt. Absolutely. No qualifications, no justifications. People didn't get to where they got to during apartheid on merit. They got there because the system was corrupt. But saying an evil system is corrupt is like saying water is wet. It's evil. It must be corrupt. You don't build an evil system based on a meritocracy. It doesn't work that way. Embedded in evil is corruption. So we agree apartheid was corrupt, Bazalwa. But let's discuss this inept part. And I'm not saying they were perfect. I'm not saying they didn't have blunders. I've seen hundreds of videos being circulated of the blunders that were committed during apartheid. I'm with you, absolutely. There is a point, though, about which I'm lost, and maybe you can help me. If the apartheid state was so incapable, and the prevailing forces during apartheid were so inept, then why do we have redress today? What are we redressing? You're redressing the legacy of apartheid, right? Right. You agree? We agree. How can you have a legacy of something that was inept? If the people implementing it were inept, there'd be no legacy. So I wrote a Facebook thread, and some of you here would have seen it, most didn't, because again, sensation is more important than the facts. You are in a 45-minute interview, somebody takes 45 seconds, and that's the part they hold on to, and that's the thing about which they want to be enraged. And I think that's the case because we, for whatever reason, seem to be more interested in being offended than in making progress. So, what is a township? A township is effectively a mass concentration camp that was designed by the apartheid state. Do townships still exist today? Yes. Now, how could an inept, incapable government have designed that? The Immorality Act, the Group Areas Act, the Land Act. Everybody today is fighting about the land question. You're fighting about the land question because you have to admit to yourself that the apartheid state, evil, maniacal, dangerous, satanic, all of those things, very, very capably built a machinery to enforce its agenda. That can't be argued. If you argue that, then you have to argue away the entire need for redress. Redress exists because we acknowledge the legacy of apartheid. Some of you tweeted me saying Vusi does not understand critical race theory. Don't even get me started. Some of you tweeted me saying, Vusi does not understand structural racism. Excuse me, how can you have structural racism unless the structures were built to be racist? And if the structures were built to be racist, what's the key word? Built. Which means there would have had to have been a set of capabilities built into the political system to enable the racism to be pervasive. You can't on the one end say that we're inept, incompetent, incapable, and then on the other end say, but we've got this legacy we've got to deal with. What legacy? A legacy of an evil system. So, I'm not saying it was good. Stop straw-manning my argument. Cut that shit out. I want to say something which I think is important. I know what happens on the Twitter streets, right? On the Twitter streets, silence seems like acquiescence. And so when you're quiet, people think they can just walk all over you. Let me say this for the, woke poets trying to be revolutionaries without a platform. You are not dealing with Vusi that you dealt with 5 years ago. I have given up on the idea of trying to be liked and accepted. I don't care if you don't like me. So if you think that there is anything you're going to say or do that's going to intimidate me into a small corner where I reduce myself, keep quiet and shut up, as some of you have said on Twitter, you have another thing coming. I'm not going to keep quiet. I will speak my truth as I see it. You want to change my mind? Come to me with fact-based argumentation and debate. Then we can discuss. You want to throw words around? Sticks and stones, boy. Sticks and stones. Some of you watching this will go, he's arrogant. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. Telling you that I will not be bullied is not arrogance. It's simply telling you, I'm not going to be bullied. And I don't care who you are. I don't care what political organization you belong to. I was fascinated. There were people on my Twitter timeline who are councillors of towns, and the finances of the town are in the red. And you are spending time talking to me on Twitter, not fixing the finances of the town. It's interesting, I said in the interview, the problem with South Africa today is it's all theatre. It's all cut and no action. Everybody's interested in the theatre. Nothing gets done. That's exactly what I meant, and that you guys just proved it over the past week. You are more interested in being angry about the theatre, the words of Vusi said, than the reality of the lived experiences on the ground every day. The everyday lived experiences of people. You're more worried about what I said than the facts. If the state is so capable, can somebody explain to me why 25 years after my father was murdered, we still don't know who the murderer is? We know who the murderer is. There were eyewitnesses. The eyewitnesses will probably die. And the murderers are still walking the streets. And there are some of you watching this who've suffered exactly the same fate as I and my family. I'm not defending apartheid, guys. There is no defense for apartheid. But let me end by saying the following. Why did I make the point I made about how capable the apartheid state machinery was? And what do I think is the missed opportunity there? I think the missed opportunity is this. It's precisely because we are unable to deal with that fact that we are unable to deal with the realities we face today. So constantly, your government, with all of the resources of your government, finds itself on the losing end of all sorts of processes, whether court or not, because your government continues to think that apartheid was just evil, rather than its purveyors were also capable. See, if you stop at hating the other party, hating your enemy, and you don't move to learning where they are capable so that you can become equally capable, nothing changes. Study civilizations, groups, societies, and communities that have suffered oppression and come out of that. Look at the Emiratis and what they have done post their colonization by the British. Look at the Jews and what they did post the horrific effects and acts of the Holocaust. Of course they hate the perpetrators of their suffering, but they didn't stop there. They went to, not only must we hate, we must also understand their capabilities so that we can make ourselves equally capable. The reason the masses of South Africa are not progressing is because you're stuck at hate. You're not moving towards making yourselves capable. That's the reason. And because you're stuck at hate, you're easy political fodder for the politicians. They throw a few hateful words around. They say stuff about other groups, and they sing a song that riles up your emotion about the struggle. And you're in there hating, baby. And you know what happens after you vote? Fuck all. Do you know why? Because you're stuck at hate. You're not building capability. Your government came up with a black industrialist program. Show me one. But you can point at each and every single industrialist that apartheid created. Some of them listed companies on the JSE. Some of the black companies listed post-apartheid are not there anymore. But your government wants you to believe that they are capable of looking after you. I'm not a politician. I'm not interested in politics, and please stop sending me Vusi for president. Not interested. And the reason I could never run for politics is because I would have to speak truths that would make me hated by everybody. Everybody. Part of the reason PE in South Africa hasn't worked is because in large part, there are large parts of the white population that have found every single excuse not to implement it. You have cheated every single scorecard. You have been front-facing and doing all sorts of things, but transforming your businesses. That is a fact. That comment would get me hated by certain people. Do you understand? This is why I'm not interested in politics, because you guys don't want to hear the truth. You want to hear the truth as it supports your beliefs. That's just not a game I'm willing to play. And then finally, let me address those of you that thought that bringing up my recent challenges with my wife was going to scare me. You make me laugh. You really do. I've been in and out of South Africa over the past 18 months, probably about 50 times. There is not a single court date that I've missed. Not one. Can I tell you my experience at court? I show up in the morning of court. And the prosecutor, this is the person trusted by the state to ensure the dispensation of justice. The prosecutor hasn't even read the docket. On more than 5 occasions, I counted, we would arrive at court and the prosecutor doesn't even have the docket. How are they prepared for court? So do you know what happens? Court is a procedure. Show up, stand, prosecution gets asked, they call your matter, and then your lawyer says something. Prosecutor says we haven't had enough time to prepare. The lawyer says we need to push this thing. Then your lawyer says, but we've given them enough time to prepare. Then they say we need more time. Let's move the date forward. That's all that's been happening. I want that matter resolved just as quickly as you do, because I guarantee you this, and you can take this to the bank. When the facts of the matter are heard, you will know that I did absolutely nothing wrong. And by the way, I'm somebody with means. I've been able to pay my bail. I have an advocate and a lawyer showing up for me in court every day. What about the justice of the people who can't pay bail? How capable is the state for the guy who can't pay bail, who lost his job at the ShopRite as a packer because he was falsely accused of a crime? Now he's sitting wallowing in jail somewhere because he can't pay bail. Where's the state and the capabilities then? Maybe that's the stuff you should be upset about. And yet you run around on social media and speak to me as if I'm a convicted felon. You're talking to somebody who's got all of his traffic fines paid. So let's recap. Because when you meet in your societies, when you end the meeting, you say, in conclusion. So let's conclude. And if you think I'm being rude, you're right. Let's recap. 1, don't steel man my argument. Don't say I said things I didn't say. 2, don't straw man my argument. Don't, whatever you do, try to use what you extrapolate myself to having said to score cheap political points. That ain't gonna work with me. 3, don't you dare think you're going to threaten me or say anything about me on social media that I have not heard said already. There is nothing you can say that's going to scare me into keeping quiet. Nothing. You may not like me, but maybe the feeling is mutual. 4, I'm anxious, just as you, to have every single thing happening around my life that has been legal resolved. Because every single time I have to show up costs me time, costs me money, it's missed and lost opportunity. Do you know how many times I've had to fly back into South Africa to appear at a court for 3 minutes and be told the prosecution isn't ready yet? That's your state. And I was somebody whose matter was on the front pages of a paper. What do you think is happening to murderers who are living in small towns somewhere? That's how files go missing. Be angry about that. Don't be angry about me. I saw somebody on Twitter saying we should protest to Vusi's office. Why don't you protest to the head office of the police? You probably don't know where they are, do you? Why don't you protest to the head office of the National Prosecuting Authority? You don't know where they are, do you? Because you're more interested in being offended than in changing things. Let me finally say this. I don't wake up in the morning with the intention to make an enemy out of people. I don't wake up in the morning with the intention to offend anybody. That's not my intention. And some of you who follow me online will know 99% of the stuff I post is uplifting, it's informational, it's sharing. But I also don't wake up in the morning with the intention to not speak the truth as I see it. And if it is the truth as I see it that you're offended by, then just stop looking. Right now, after this, hit block, unsubscribe, whatever you need to do. Sayonara. If you want to engage in political discourse and debate, go for it. I'm happy to learn. I'm happy to be educated. South Africa is dwindling, guys. If you're not aware, you're dwindling. You're a boat without a skilled sailor. You're a ship without a rudder. And the seas are taking you wherever they want. Those seas are the agendas of everybody but the South Africans themselves. You're dwindling. You're dwindling. I said in the interview, nobody got upset about this. This is really what you should have been upset about. Talent is leaving. Capital is being externalized. Tax revenues are being lost. Those are the facts to be upset about. South Africa is dwindling into the abyss. You're sinking into irrelevance. And the only question for South Africans to answer for themselves: in 2 generations' time, when your grandchildren look at you and say, this beautiful country you tell me about that had so much potential, where you guys ran ads about being alive with possibility, what happened to it? Oh, and grandmom or granddad, when it was happening, what did you do? I can only hope for yourself that you will have an answer for yourself, that you'll be able to give an account of yourself. I said in the interview with JJ, I'm a nobody man. I'm just a kid from a township who, by God's grace and his father's fortitude, a turn of political fortune because of our struggle heroes, was given opportunities that most people were not. But I think it's deeply ironical. It's deeply ironic to fight for a generation to have the freedom critically, and then when they do, criticize them for thinking independently and critically. What you do with this is up to you. Share it, don't share it, distribute it, don't distribute it, all yours. Agree, don't agree, feel free to leave a comment. If you don't, that's okay too. You know, we're shooting this from our new office in Sandton. Because even though I'm a global citizen, I've decided that I can't run away from my home, so we need to reinvest back home. So it's up to you. Future of this country, up to you. You know, as a young boy, my English teacher used to read this poem by John Donne. Send not to know for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee. He wrote the poem at the end of World War I, and he was talking about how all of us are called at a certain time in our lives to stand for something bigger than ourselves. He says in the poem, "Every man's death affecteth me, because I am involved in mankind, and so sent not to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee." Every South African suffering should affect you, because you're a South African. So send not to know who must fix it. You're it. You're the solution.